Score, the podcast. The only show taking you inside the studios of the world's most celebrated composers and musicians.
From Santa Monica this week, this is Score, the podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Holmes, with my co-host, Robert Kraft.
Hello.
And we're joined every week by our executive producer, Matt Schrader. Hey, Matt.
Hey, guys.
We're excited about this week's guest. He has a big movie coming out next month, Ant-Man and The Wasp.
July 6th.
July 6th, yeah. He's an Emmy Award-winning composer of some of the biggest shows and movies of the last 2 decades, including a classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I know a lot of people watch that. I remember the film.
Yeah, people still watch that.
And the show, and then also Angel, which was the spinoff. The Muppets. He did Pitch Perfect, Frozen, Trolls, a ton of good animated classics. Edge of Tomorrow, The Hangover, classic.
Edge of Tomorrow is so great. I have a question about Edge of Tomorrow we'll ask.
Yeah, really cool soundtrack. The score is fantastic.
You're missing some of Chris's biggest hits, which he and I did together. How about Employee of the Month?
Oh, yes. Was that a Dane Cook classic?
It might have been. You're right.
Our studio audience loves
Cheaper
that
by
movie.
the dozen Chris and I worked on, which is great.
And then, as we mentioned, he did Ant-Man a few years ago, and Ant-Man and The Wasp coming out July 6th, and also an upcoming comedy, Holmes and Watson, starring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, the Step Brothers.
Oh,
So
nice.
that ought to be hilarious, I'm sure. I mean, those guys
It better
together.
be.
It better be, yeah.
Yeah.
Also on today's show, an all-new episode of Behind the Score, and we're featuring 2 of the orchestra for Hollywood, 2 of the greatest, Dave Ewart and Steve Erdody.
This is one of the really interesting things that we encountered making the movie was all these studio musicians, their job is to go in, not know what they're going to play, get handed a
Sight reading,
a packet of sheet music, and sit down real quickly. As soon as the clock strikes 10, they're recording that stuff, and they're so good at this that it just is astonishing. So we got a couple of them. Steve Erdody, of course, has played on. I think he says 12,000 films or 1,200 films. I guess it wouldn't be 1,000.
12 million, I think.
And how cool is it to say that, I've only played music for the greatest movies, all of them, to say like, I was part of the orchestra of every movie that has a notable score. It's just incredible.
It's the great L.A. Local 47, which is the union here. It is the greatest film music making body of musicians probably on the planet. I mean, England is great. New York is really good. The L.A. filmmaking orchestra is just brilliant.
And just what a cool job.
Yeah.
And
it's a very, very sacred chair to get in, which is one of those chairs. It's not like, we have different musicians every week. You see the same players because they're reliable. They show up. That's their job.
I guess the only downfall is you see the end of every movie like in an unclimactic way before it comes out.
Although you record in pieces, right? So maybe
not only
you don't
record in
know.
pieces, you're also almost all the time you're facing the conductor and
That's
the
true.
screens behind you, so you don't know. Though some composers like to show scenes. They ask the orchestra to either turn around or they put a monitor up in the room so they can show a scene and say, this is the emotion that I want you to get for this cue.
That's coming up in Behind the Score. Plus, we're going to play the game that's sweeping the nation and social media behind that score. Name that score.
Name that score.
And Matt, what's the topic this week with Chris Beck?
Alien movies. These are all movies about alien invasions, going to Mars, different alien-oriented movies that all have pretty dramatic scores, even some of the comedies.
And we have an autographed Frozen soundtrack if somebody runs the table. Speaking of Frozen, I'm freezing in here.
It's a cold studio.
So we wanted to touch on the nominations are coming up, or are they open now for the Emmys?
Yeah, yes, they are. And
people are voting, yep.
People are voting on these, and so there's always a handful of TV shows and scores, especially. Those are the 2 that we've been looking at that get nominated for these. It would be too much for us to give 5 nominees for each one. So
it's hard enough to pick
I know
2.
you guys have been jotting down, looking into a couple of these things, and I figured what we'll do is jump into a couple and give our 2 locks for both a series, which can be a drama or a comedy. Feel free to pick either, or and then also our score. So show and score are the two that we're going to pick. We're going to give you our locks, and we will bet you that we're going to get them right because we're the experts.
And if we lose, the money comes from Matt, I guess, if you're betting on my behalf.
If we lose, then we'll have to give away a soundtrack or something.
Well, obviously with the shows, there's two different categories. There's the drama and then the comedy.
Right. And they're different categories.
The scores are combined. There isn't two categories for that.
Right.
So.
Scores are all one thing. So I figure we'll go through this first. I know you guys both have your locks for this stuff, right? Robert, do you for shows? Give me your two shows you think are a lock.
What are you researching over there, Robert?
A composer's name. I thought I would just make sure that I'm always correct about something I'm guessing at. So the locks for shows, and this might be personal preference, but my number one lock for show would be Handmaid's Tale.
Oh yeah,
for drama.
Last year's drama winner.
I think we're going again. I think this season is as interesting and also unique in that they had to create an entirely new story. The first season's based on the Margaret Atwood book. This is the TV writers came up with a new story. It is so mind-bendingly great. I literally can't wait.
Really
I can't wait till Wednesday
too.
night. I haven't had that in a long time to see what happens next, and I'm kind of already sad that it has to end at some point. I just love the show that much.
Well, don't worry. We'll have at least a season 3 and probably 4, 5, 6, 7.
And I think for comedy, I'm going to actually break a lot of rules here and go Atlanta.
Oh yeah, my lock for comedy.
That one's a lock for sure.
Because last year, the only Atlanta won for director, actor, but Veep stole the show for the show
the
category.
Perennial winner. Yep.
But Veep is not eligible this year. So
Kenny, what do you got for shows? Atlanta's one of your picks.
Atlanta, and then Game of Thrones. I'm going to really just go out on a limb here.
I think that Game of Thrones has won, 5 of the last 7 years or something like that.
That they were eligible, yeah.
That they've been eligible, right. Which, of course, it has to, the Emmys, you got to fit into a certain qualification
Yeah, it's a
window.
weird window. It's not it's like a fiscal year. It's not the actual year.
Right.
It's always odd. I remember, was it the OJ show on FX? I think it won the Emmy 2 years after it aired because it was right at the end of one window. So it seemed odd that it was in the award season.
I once got yelled at Fox
by OJ
because not by OJ because the Grammy window is substantially different from the Oscar window.
Yeah.
And I was told, why do you music guys have to make this so difficult? I thought, it is actually all my fault. And I decide these things. Just for those of you that are interested, the window for the Academy Awards is a movie has to be in a theater, theatrically, by the final night of that year. In other words, it can play from
December 31st. Right?
Correct. It can play from Christmas Day to December 31st. That's a week. And if it shows theatrically in that week, then you can be eligible. The Grammys,
it's September or something. It's some weird
September 30th.
Okay.
It has to be released and in the marketplace. And of course, now there are so many questions. What if it's a Netflix film? Does that make it not eligible?
Yeah, can you do one or the other?
And if a single streams on the night of September 29th, is it now in release? So life is complicated, and I don't know the Emmy window. Do you?
Well, it's different for... No, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, we're going to get back to you on that. We'd like all of you to stay glued to this podcast.
It's like July
all
or
right,
something.
here's my two
It's
picks.
like July. That's what you write out in the
Matt,
rules
what are
when you
your
look
choices?
under windows.
Let's move on.
Anyway, where are we?
It's like July.
My two... It's like July. It's like July. Game of Thrones was my pick, but since Kenny said that, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. Westworld, I think, is one of my locks. And then I'm surprised neither of you guys said this. The Crown. The Crown is
we could
huge.
only pick two, Matt.
I
How dare you guys? I said
Gosh.
pick 2, and you didn't even mention The Crown. So The Crown, I feel like, is an absolute lock for
Robert,
for one of these.
what are your score locks?
my score locks, which is like a warlock, only different,
It's not.
is
You're a wordsmith.
I am a wordsmith. First of all, I love, not surprisingly, the score to *Handmaid's Tale* by somebody I don't know, Adam Taylor. If you're out there, Adam, raise your hand and say, I did that. The theme of *Handmaid's Tale* stays with me. There's something really mournful about it, of course, because the show is sad. So I just think it's an amazing thing. I also am a huge fan of Sean Callery's music for *Homeland*.
Oh,
Yeah.
Homeland's
I think
great.
I think the theme is beyond inventive, kind of jazzy, but with these weird samples and voices. But the music is just brilliant. Those
*Handmaid's Tale* and *Homeland*. are
Homeland,
Robert's
yep.
picks.
I'm going to go with Matt, I can't believe you didn't say The Crown. I'm going to go with Lorne Balfe's score for The Crown as one of my locks for score. And then my other one, which I'm not
Which
sure.
is a great score.
Yeah.
It's so I really personally like the way that the music plays loud in that, and it works so well for the era too.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
My other one, and we actually had this conversation this morning about I don't know if it qualifies, but Westworld by Ramin Djawadi.
super.
The music is so great, but I wonder, and we looked it up, and I'm still not 100% clear on if we're right on this, but it may not qualify because a lot of the songs are orchestrated, but they're not original songs.
It's so subtle, and the Academy has a number of rules about what makes something original. So the Emmys, clearly, because we're
You looked
catching
it
up
up.
with the Emmys.
You looked it up.
Yeah, it has to be wholly original. You can't have a melody or something else from some pre-existing
So
material.
I wonder if they can eliminate that from the
Well,
entry. If
usually
there's
it's
enough
51%.
music. Oh,
Right.
it's 51. So maybe it does qualify. It wasn't nominated last year, but they did get a nomination for the show title theme. So
Right.
Do you think that Legion's score by Jeff Russo will end up being considered this year?
Stepping on my toes a little bit here,
Oh,
Robert. This is
Matt,
one of my picks.
I'm getting ahead of you. I didn't realize
So we
that was
talked
a
to
pick.
Jeff Russo last year. So much of
last year.
sorry,
Time's moving fast
Time
for
does
you.
go
It's
fast.
a couple weeks ago. Last year, as in a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he's done a couple seasons of Legion, but some of the things he's done have been really inventive.
Oh, yeah.
This dance battle scene, and that's something you can't do in most TV shows, is score something that's so weird of a story kind of element as that, and it's something that he's done really, really well, and the music's phenomenal. So that's one of my locks. The other one that I wanted to mention is Mr. Robot, Matt Quayle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so cool.
Now, personally, I think the show isn't quite as good as it was a couple years ago, but the score for that is really, really powerful, and I think it does the thing that I really like in a lot of shows, which is it plays loud and you feel the emotion.
I wonder how they got Freddie Mercury into that show, because he's playing, I think, the lead character, which is really amazing.
That's tough.
I can tell you something about the Emmy calendar, just for all our listeners who have been wondering since we teased it. June 1st
June.
to May 31st. So that means a show has to be on the air between those dates to be that calendar year of a TV season and be considered. So,
Which is why it's always so odd, because it's like the calendar starts in the summer, so you're not really paying as much attention to TV, and then stuff really starts rolling out.
I mean, traditionally, the TV season starts after Labor Day and mid-September. You start rolling out
The
new
fall.
shows. So if you release a show during the summer months, you might not even know it or consider it.
2 words for you. Jordan Bieber.
That's exactly right.
I just realized I didn't get a chance to unveil my new drop.
Uh-oh.
Pause, hit subscribe, maybe rate and review.
Maybe rate and review.
I don't
Good
know.
reminder to you, the listeners, to pause, hit subscribe, maybe rate and review.
Pause, hit subscribe, maybe rate and review. Hey.
That is a fantastic drop.
That's
I
a good
think
drop.
that
We
is
can
just-
use that a lot. And please do tell a friend, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and by the way, people have been rate and reviewing and hitting pause, perhaps. I don't know when they did it, but thank you for doing that, and a reminder to continue to tell a friend. It really helps our show grow.
Pretty fresh.
Pretty fresh. Coming up after the break, we are bringing him in. He's an Emmy-winning composer, and he's scoring the new Ant-Man and The Wasp coming out July 6th. He's
Great composer.
Christophe Beck, and he's joining us right after the break.
Hey, Matt Schrader here. We're back to the show in 15 seconds, but a quick thank you to everyone who's been telling a friend about Score the Podcast. We're one of the fastest growing entertainment podcasts out there right now, and that's thanks to you telling a friend. You're probably thinking of somebody else right now that'd enjoy the show. If it's safe to do so, hit pause and let them know about Score the Podcast. It helps keep this show going. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Chris Beck's studio. You know, it's funny you said you were the comedy guy. I actually had I had the perfect seat, front row seat for you evolving, because we started back with a number of pictures that I can't imagine.
Just Married was the first.
Just Married, exactly right. And then I can't imagine you came to Hollywood thinking, my ambition in life is to score Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Which I didn't, by the way. Shockingly, I didn't.
You know, but you did do, I remember when we did Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yeah.
And you know, I do a film music lecture that I kind of take around some clips. I use a Cheaper by the Dozen cue. First I play the cue, play the scene with no music, and it's the scene where
Stadium?
No, it's a scene where they are eating breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
You look alive, she says, look alive, and she's throwing eggs and pancakes and toast on everybody's plate, and then the frog escapes, and the frog jumps around, and I show it without music, and people in the audience kind of laugh because it's sort of funny. Steve Martin and all the kids, Haley Duff.
Hillary
Duff. Yeah. It's Jordan Bieber's sister's Haley Duff.
Girlfriend.
Right. So, 2 words for you. Jordan Bieber. Good, thanks. So, Hillary, which is the kind of combination, Hillary Duff, and the frog escapes, and you did something in the cue that makes the audience roar with laughter. I don't know if you remember what you did.
I don't.
It's so great. And so I saw the evolution of Christophe Beck in this moment. Fairly traditional comedic cue, and there's some tension while they're chasing the frog, and the frog escapes to the top of a lamp.
Ooh, I'm thinking it's coming back to me now.
And
Mexican standoff.
Steve Martin is creeping up on it, and the music goes straight up. Wild Kingdom meets total tension, and you hear the kind of like a shakuhachi go.
Yeah.
And the whole audience laughs because it's really, oh my God, in the suburban kitchen, we're sneaking through the jungle to catch this frog. And it's really funny. The music makes the audience laugh.
That is a great example of one of the most effective techniques you can use in film scoring, which is you ignore what you're seeing, you ignore the setting, and you just get all the way into the characters' minds, and then you exaggerate it.
Oh, that's great, because that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Steve Martin, literally, if you could do what's happening on screen, he would be in a pith helmet, in a kind of, sneaking through the jungle to catch
the complete opposite music of what
dangerous,
you'd expect.
Black Panther is there in the jungle, and he's going to sneak up on it. And what is it? He's, has a hockey lacrosse stick, trying to catch a frog. And but I wondered, when you were doing those films, this is something I guess we all wonder about various stages in our career. So here you're doing these kind of films. You said you were the comedy guy, and you said you were aspiring to do a World War II or an action movie. Did you always have faith that you would get there? Did you think you'd be pigeonholed?
I think the natural psychological reaction to that situation is to have faith. I mean, if I didn't have faith, why would I bother, in a way? However, it's not the sort of thing that was top of mind all the time. I take, as you know, I take my job, we all do, we take our jobs very seriously. Yeah. And, in the moment when I'm working on a scene with a frog in a kitchen, it's all about that. And it's how can I make the scene as funny as possible? How can I make my clients as happy as possible? And it's not, oh my God, when am I going to get to do my World War II movie?
Ooh, that's so good. That's really smart.
Well, it's I don't want to say it's effortless for me, but it's my natural. And it's one of the things that makes me well suited for the job is to just take the job really to heart.
It's the secret of success for anything, though, is if you're, I mean, listen, if you're watching the NBA,
it's work ethic, basically.
Watching the NBA finals, and if the guy is not looking at the ball being passed to him, he's looking away, he actually misses the pass.
Yeah.
So you have to be focused on the moment to make the basket.
Yeah.
I do wonder, part of that is, was there any picture that you felt you had made some kind of leap? Was there a gig that came that you thought, ooh, I just stepped up? I mean, there were some big movies that really made people aware of, and I must say this with all due and appropriate respect, I knew from the first pictures we did together how great you were. You were
thank you very much.
Unbelievably capable of any kind of situation, solving it musically, and I thought, this guy's got a huge career ahead of him. And I wonder if there was one movie where you thought, other people now see that or know it.
It's a tricky question because every once in a while I will, especially if I take a break and I come back to film scoring, or it's a genre that I haven't tried before, or a style that I haven't tried before, and I start working, and it's never a conscious thing, but the perfect example is 12th Man. When I started working on some of the orchestral action cues there, I without really thinking about it, adopted a more visceral and minimalist approach than I would normally otherwise take with a movie like Ant-Man, for example, which is a little bit more about orchestral fireworks and a little bit more of a traditional approach in the action sequences. And then I surprise myself. I kind of take a step back and go, oh wow, that's kind of a new sound for me, and I'm kind of digging it, and I'm just gonna like let myself develop that further and see how that goes. It doesn't happen on every movie, but the reason why it's a tricky question is because, and 12th Man is a perfect example of this, it came out in theaters a few weeks ago. It's no longer in theaters. Not many people saw it. It's a great movie, but it's in Norwegian, and it was, you could argue that it was hampered by maybe marketing that wasn't as good or as pervasive as it could be. So it's basically, you and me and these two guys, know about it now, and maybe a handful of others, but it's not the second part of your question, which is like everyone can see that I've made this leap. That's the part that hasn't and probably won't happen, but that's okay. That's the business.
But I think you answered the question in another way, inadvertently, which is that you make the leap per picture. In other words, whether the picture is kind of this kind of movie, or you're going to do, here's Frozen, or here's Edge of Tomorrow, or here's a different kind of movie, this is actually a step in my career. What you said is that each new movie, in some way, you learn about your process, and it's a leap forward, and that leads you maybe to the next picture.
One of the next things that I actually wanted to ask you, Edge of Tomorrow is a fantastic film. Like
Yes.
that's a fantastic
totally
film.
great.
And it's kind of a shame that it wasn't the commercial success that I think it really should have been. It had big star
and
power.
you thought it was going to
very
be,
well
right?
done.
And I thought it was. It didn't do as well, I guess.
It disappointed a little bit, commercially at least.
Such a
It's
cool
it's
movie.
a favorite, and they marketed it.
Why do you think
strange
that
way too.
is? I mean, is it because of the marketing? Maybe the title?
When you change the title, and I think they
Did
The
they
original
change-
title was All You Need Is Kill.
Yep.
And I think they shied away from that word, kill.
They changed that, and then they changed it again when it went to home video, and then now
Right.
they've marketed
Live,
it
Die,
as
Repeat.
Live, Die,
Yeah,
Repeat. So
yeah.
it's been all over the place. But I wanted to ask you, scoring a film like that, I'm sure you get asked a lot when you're doing a film, look, sometimes this maybe isn't going to be the greatest film in the world. Sometimes you must have the opposite feeling.
I knew right away. I went to go watch this. I was a second composer on that project, but they had a very, very long post. So even though I was coming in after they had worked with another composer for some time, there was still 6 months to go or something. And I sat down to watch it, and I mean, like anyone else who watches that movie and loves it, I loved it. And it was not that different, really, from what came out in theaters.
And it had a really cool sound, too. We got a clip here.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, this one.
It's heavy, metallic. There's that relentless
12-8.
kind of. Did this kind of thing just hit you as you were seeing the picture, Is there a gut instinct seeing something that seems like it's really well put together?
Oh, you make it sound so simple. I mean, that was 6 months of working with, in my opinion, one of the best directors in the business, Doug Lyman, but also one of the most challenging directors in the business to work for as a composer. He's he one of the reasons why I love working with him is because I know, despite whatever misery I may feel on the way, that he's going to kick my ass until something excellent comes out. And in that particular case, I have to give a shout out to Zach Robinson, excuse me, who was working with me at the time and who kind of started that whole idea, the 12/8 idea, and then at a certain point passed it over to me and I finished it. But a lot of what makes that cue great comes from him.
You might want to explain for 1 second to those
Sure.
of our listeners that don't understand what 12/8 means and why it's significant in metal.
Well, normally, I don't know how metal 12/8 is. I don't. We could make a short list of metal songs in 12/8, but it's a description of a rhythmic feel that you can intuit from a piece. Typically, the most common type of feel is what we refer to as 4/4, and that would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So when we say 12/8, we're really taking those same 4 beats and dividing them instead of evenly by 2 to make 8 subdivisions. We are dividing them by 3 to make 12. So it ends up sounding like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And in that particular piece, it's moving along a lot faster.
Piece of it. You'll hear, and we can count it.
Wait, let me try to do it in the speed of the piece. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or it's even more like, yeah.
Got our drummer over here.
Yeah.
It's a really cool set, and obviously that's just a chunk of the score. The score's fantastic for the whole film.
Thank you.
And it's actually a pretty fun one to listen through in full also.
This movie also had big movie stars. It's really the calculus of Hollywood. How do you apply it? You have big movie stars. You have a huge movie star. You have a wonderful actress
Tom Cruise,
playing a
Emily Blunt.
tough,
Yeah.
woman's role, which you don't ordinarily see. You have a great composer, which clearly is saving the movie. You have a big-time director, a big successable director.
And a really cool and interesting and kind of mind-bending story. And is cursing allowed in this scenario?
Of course.
So I think to say what you're saying, like the Hollywood calculus in this particular case is, well, we kind of fucked this up. Let's get it right on the sequel. And so, of course, now they're making a sequel. And I would expect that a movie like this, which has become almost a cult hit,
Yeah, right. It has.
on streaming and DVD when people watch DVDs. There's going to be a lot of anticipation for the sequel. And I think it's going to do huge numbers, no matter how good it is.
Are you back for number 2?
I hope to be.
Fingers
not
crossed.
quite yet. I think they're still working on the script. And
Yeah.
Well, speaking of sequels, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Chris about, we mentioned a little bit, Ant-Man, and we have Ant-Man and the Wasp coming up next month.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you about this this new really cool thing you're involved in, the Beck Diversity Project that you're working on here.
Yeah. So we'll get to all that in just a bit, but first, Behind the Score.
Behind the Score, the inside stories from Hollywood's greatest filmmakers and composers.
Many film composers argue their craft is similar to that of a painter. It starts with an idea and a sketch before the paint palette comes out. That paint palette for many composers is the orchestra, each instrument with its own vibrant color and feeling. And in Hollywood, those instruments are played by virtuosos, the best players in the world, people like cellist Steve Erdody.
I've done actually well over 1,200 movies. I've lost count, so it's been a nice ride.
Because most major motion pictures are top secret until the film is released, players even as trusted as Erdody usually play cold, recording while they're reading the sheet music for the first time.
Most times we don't get to see the music until we get to the sound stage, to the scoring stage. We end up literally getting there a half hour early, 45 minutes early, and take a look at what we have to do that day.
In fact, you can see him all over Score, a film music documentary, on the scoring stages at both Warner Brothers and Fox.
That's all we do. So we go go into a session. It's generally either 3 hours or 6 hours, and we can record in 6 hours. Sometimes we've done almost 90 minutes of music in a 6-hour session.
I mean, there are electric moments, and then there are electric moments.
Violinist Dave Ewart has played on many famous scores, from Titanic to Jurassic Park.
There are moments when you just feel like you've just tasted a little piece of immortality, you know? I mean, it's silly to say, but we do feel that.
And on the other hand, sometimes it's not electric, and there's the pressure of one person's mistake requiring a whole cue to be re-recorded.
We're expected to either render a flawless performance every time or simply not play that note. So we're programmed that way. So it's fun, it's exciting, it's stimulating. People come from all over the world to get in on it, and it never lost its appeal to me after 25 years of doing it.
For more stories behind the score, read Score, The Interviews, based on the international hit film Score, a film music documentary featuring raw insight from Hans Zimmer, James Cameron, Quincy Jones, Randy Newman, Trent Reznor, and many more. Score, The Interviews, available now at score-movie.com.
Welcome back to Score the Podcast. We're here with Christophe Beck, Emmy Award-winning composer, and a big announcement came out just recently about the SESAC Scores Beck Diversity Project. And Matt, you mentioned you guys had you and Chris spent some time in Calgary at the film festival.
So it's interesting how some of these things go full circle, and this is something that's important, obviously, and there's been a discrepancy because there is a lack of diversity. It's something that's kind of unspoken in the industry sometimes. But part of what you're doing, Chris, this $1 million 5-year mentorship program to support underrepresented composers, and this is something that came up at a lot of the film festivals that we went to. They said, we like score film music documentary. The one question that I have, though, is how come there aren't more women? How come there aren't more people of color? And there are some great examples of both of those, but not as many as you might expect.
It's limited
in a musical field. So obviously, it's something that you have been interested in and
are now championing.
Championing. But I remember you rescued us because it's always a question that we would get, and at the Calgary Film Festival, which you attended with me, we got that question. You said, well, let me answer that. This is something that is an issue, and it's something that is that you see an imbalance more so than in a lot of other fields that are even in Hollywood, where this has been something that's come up time and again over the last several years, especially. But tell me a little bit about what led you to really trying to champion this cause.
Well, you guys are very polite because you're using such mild words to describe what is an disaster of lack of. It's not just a lack of diversity. It's a complete and total lack of diversity. And as you mentioned, it's all these other fields that have been getting so much attention in the last few years. I mean, the composer field is by far worse. It's a little game I like to play, make a list in your head of the top 100 media composers, film, TV, commercials, video games, documentaries, whatever. How many people of color are on that list? How many women are on that list? And I think the number total is fewer than 5. You could argue about who might make, on the bubble, the top 100, like one of our foremost African-American composers, great composer, Terrence Blanchard. Does he make that top 100 list? Probably. But are there any others? And it's really, really appalling. And I always was a little bit too into my own career, a little bit too into my own thing to really do anything about it. But there was a voice in the back of my head that spoke up every once in a while saying, you're the beneficiary of this situation. And that's awesome for me. But, this industry is, from purely a creative perspective, suffering from
Right.
from a lack of different voices. And so, okay, one day when I have time and money, I'll do something about it. And a few years later, one day when I have time and money, I'll do something about it. A few years later, one day, and then a few years later, I had time and money. And that was a couple years ago when I took 6 months off just to take a break from film scoring, recharge my batteries a little. And I thought, that's one of the things I'm gonna actually work on during my time off. And then I had a lot of lunches with a lot of different people, picking their brain, like
Right.
how do we solve
What
this
can we do?
problem?
Yeah.
It's really tough. And part of the problem is the pool of composers is so small.
Right.
I would ask a head of music at a studio, why don't you hire more composers who are women or people of color? And they would say, because there aren't any. And of course that isn't true. But from their perspective, I understand why they say that, because, their job isn't to go out and find these undiscovered talents. Their job is to find people that have enough experience to
That can
make
get
sure
the
that
job
their-
done, yeah.
that their bosses
Especially
will
the
feel
big
comfortable.
projects, you would think.
Exactly.
You
exactly.
don't want to take that risk.
It's a
of
big risk.
bringing a rookie in and
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a chicken and egg problem, of course, classic. So for that side of things, I've been teaching high school kids. I've done 2 sessions so far, one a couple years ago at Centennial High School in Compton, and just finished a couple of classes at Fauché Academy, which is by USC, and just trying to expose the amazing, wonderful, often very creatively rewarding industry we all work in, and show them that it's available to them, because otherwise it might not even occur to them that this industry exists at all.
Sure. Well, that's the amazing thing about this industry too, is it's based on all of these extremely very different musical sounds and the different perspectives different composers have, and the different creative
stories.
things that they bring to a film. And they are
Think about
storytellers.
a movie like Black Panther, which is a Marvel movie, but it has a completely unique sound and an amazing score. Made by a team of a Caucasian composer, an African American composer, but
Yep.
I think you really feel the uniqueness of
Yeah.
that. And it's not just a
Totally.
film composer faking African music, It really felt a little bit different. This fund, which is really a post-production fund that will subsidize music budgets on low-budget movies. The idea is, if a director has already hired a woman or a person of color as their composer, and the budget is really small, and let's say there's no money for an orchestra, then we can come in and say, hey, here's $20,000-$30,000. It gets you 2 days in
Great.
Prague.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that now you can have an orchestral score for maybe not the whole score, but part of it, the important parts.
So it's like a grant, essentially.
Exactly. And I would be personally involved. That's where the mentorship comes in. Not to look over their shoulder and say, no, make a B flat, not a B sharp or whatever, but to really just to make sure that I want to make sure the money goes into the score and that it is something that you can feel and hear in the finished product. So, I mean, getting a live orchestra is a perfect example of that. And everybody wins. The score has a much better production value. The filmmakers get a real orchestra to play the score. And it might not be that. It might be a mixing engineer for 4 days, because a lot of
So it
composers
could
are
be
not.
any benefit. It just
Yes.
basically, if you hire a woman or a person of color to score your film, there is a program from SESAC that's a grant program, and I think that directors should know about this, and producers should know about this,
Yeah.
and indie filmmakers, because that is a wonderful door into the process.
Well, let's switch gears because we want to get to Ant-Man.
Sure.
Before we get into our next break, when we talked to you for Score, a film music documentary, in this very room, you told us that you were interested in doing a superhero film,
Did I?
and you did. And
You
that
did.
was
And you mentioned, now look, there's one that you did a while ago that had a really interesting score that you had recorded with an orchestra and
Yep.
had kind of chopped
That
up.
was
and
Fox, yeah.
Had made it really
Thank
interesting.
you, Robert,
on
for financing my crazy experimentation here. Yeah.
Which film are we talking
Electra.
about?
It was Electra.
Amazing. Electra also was notable just for all of you soundtrack fans, and we may get to the
Oh,
soundtrack.
the soundtrack was great. Yeah.
And I was played a demo by a band called Evanescence.
Oh yeah.
And thought, this kind of fits in some ways.
Oh, is that? Oh, okay.
And we put the demo in called Bring Me to Life, and a whole musical package escalated. But that's right.
Now,
Electra.
Marvel
Jennifer
was not the thing that Marvel is now.
Right. Things have
back
changed.
when you did that film.
That's right.
With Ant-Man, when you came onto the project, did you have ideas ready to go? Were you itching to jump back into the superhero world, or did you start from scratch?
I had some really bad ideas ready to go. Yeah. I remember Peyton and I got very excited about, we get seduced by, I'm gesturing toward this giant modular synth here to my left. We get seduced by how awesome it is and sometimes lose sight of what's best for the picture. And I created with him, very closely working with me, 3 or 4 pieces that were heavily electronic and what you might call glitchy, and it had all these, from a strictly thank you. I hear a little bit of what I'm not talking about playing, which I'm very glad.
I think this is the opening, I believe. This is not
it's
what
the main theme. Yeah, it was a great electronic musical depiction of insects. It was skittery. It had a kind of there was some custom software that I was working on that would take like one sound and using a kind of granular synthesis, turn it into 500 of the same but slightly different timing and pitch, and it made it sound like a swarm of insects playing that instrument together.
Cool.
We played it for Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel, and he said, sounds great, but I don't really like it that much when I hear music that makes me think my speakers are broken. That's basically what he said. And it kind of made us laugh, and it also kind of made us realize that we'd maybe gone a little off into a science experiment and lost sight of what the actual movie was about, which was a heist movie. And it felt like it needed a little bit more of a grounded approach, and instead of crazy skittery electronic effects, which really pull the ear away from the story and just sort of like, what is that I'm hearing? It was strange. And of course I love it when things sound strange, but in movie scoring sometimes, you gotta pick your moments when you're going to do strange. Yeah.
Sure.
So we sort of decided to try a different approach, which was to really hook our fingers into the whole heist idea and get into like the 60s and the 70s classic heist.
I was going to say,
tropes.
This has got almost a kind of jazzy John Barry.
Exactly.
Sneaking up,
Yeah.
almost Mancini-esque.
Little
Yeah.
Ocean's
Right there.
11
Exactly.
something.
Yeah, so like bongos, alto flutes, which we're hearing now, vibes, things like that.
We're in this era now where like every comic book is being made. I had never even heard of Ant-Man, and some of these comics that are like Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most popular movies, and then there's some Batman movies that are not doing well. Were you surprised by the success of this first film and the interest of Ant-Man versus some of these other bigger comic books that maybe aren't making it as well?
No, because Marvel is really, really, really good at making these movies.
Yeah.
And after I saw it, and I saw how funny it was and how breezy it was, after the heaviness of the movie that had come just before it, which I think was the second part of the first Avengers two-parter, which was really heavy and
more serious.
More serious. I don't even want to say it was like a downer, because there were certainly moments of levity in it, but it was like big end-of-the-world stuff going on. And then for the next movie that Marvel comes out with is just a guy trying to see his daughter, basically.
Nice.
And by the way, he's also like this goofy, pretty good thief, and so that really gave us an opportunity for the music to have the same kind of levity. And the movie as a whole, I think, was a breath of fresh air for people after was Age of Ultron, I think, maybe. I don't know if I'm getting that right. And now we're kind of setting up for the same thing. We just had Thanos
another
do his
big
thing
one
at the end of that movie, and here we are, with another Ant-Man that's going to also be a much smaller world, a much smaller, not a smaller story, but a story that is more about personal relationships and less about saving the world.
We're going to take a break.
Just out of curiosity, because the excitement has been building.
It
in the
is.
room. Are we going to play
Name That Score. We are
that's
right after this.
Exciting.
Hey, Matt Schrader here, Director of Score of Film Music Documentary. For the latest news from the film music world, follow us on Facebook. Just search Score of Film Music Documentary. Or let us know who you want to hear next on the show on Twitter, @ScoreThePodcast.
Welcome back to Score the Podcast. We're here in Santa Monica. It's a beautiful day, and we're here with Christophe Beck, Emmy Award-winning composer. We were just talking about Ant-Man. Excited for that coming up in just a few weeks.
July 6th.
More accurately, Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Excuse me, Ant-Man. You can't diss the Wasp.
There's a new theme, maybe.
There's a new theme for the Wasp. Wait, what?
We don't know. Well, guess we'll have to
The Wasp has a
buy
theme?
your tickets.
Breaking
July
news.
6th.
Do you have a breaking news?
Okay,
Breaking
there
news.
is a new theme for the Wasp. Yes, indeed.
Breaking news.
This just in. New theme
That
for
was
the
not
Wasp.
it.
Yeah, it was a little plain, Chris. I don't know what that was.
I don't really get it. It's like one note.
It sounded like stinging, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It made me think my speakers were broken.
All right, well, it's time to play the game. It's sweeping social media and the nation. Let's do it.
Get ready to play Name That Score! Woohoo! The film music game where a perfect score means you, yes you, could be a winner. Now let's play Name That Score!
Is a celebrity voice, is it not?
Yeah. That's wow. Chris is getting into that. I don't know about John Powell now. Now I'm his
Sounds like 5 pounds of cheese.
I don't know. I think Chris liked that.
Well,
it was
but
pretty
Sounds
tasteful.
like 5 pounds
John-
of intense and amazing fun.
John,
you go.
John was talking about the theme, though. Chris was talking about the voice.
Let's not split hairs. Let's not split hairs here, Kenny.
Matt Sajak over there.
So, for those who don't know how to play this, and Chris hasn't played this before, we play 5 famous film scores in reverse. Robert, Kenny, and Chris will all pick from 3 multiple-choice answers. The last question is worth double. And if anybody gets all 5 of the questions right, we give away a prize on our Twitter account @ScoreThePodcast. All you have to do is mention #NameThatScore. And today's theme is alien movies. Ooh. So we got 5 clips and then a tiebreaker should we need it. To
Very
recap.
exciting.
Oh.
A little
You
foreshadowing.
got my competitive juices flowing.
There might
here.
be a little. Let's see. Is that in? No, we don't have that in this one. That was in a couple weeks ago, but not this one. So we got 5 questions and a tiebreaker should we need it. We will start with question 1. Remember, this is in reverse.
Hang on, I need to warm up. Okay, I'm good.
The first question is this from Aliens 1986, James Horner, Avatar 2009, James Horner, or Total Recall, which is set on Mars. Maybe not really that much of an alien movie, but 1990, Jerry Goldsmith.
Where's the button so I can buzz in?
Chris has it. Hold on, Chris, because Robert's going to try to read your mind first.
I'm just going to steal your answer. I'm not going to read anything.
I know what it's not.
Kenny knows what it's not. The options again: Aliens, Avatar, and Total Recall. Who wants to go first?
Me. Voice is a dead giveaway. Avatar.
Avatar. That may have been a little too confident. Robert may go with that. Robert, what do you think?
If Chris
He's
feels-
looking at Kenny now.
If Chris feels
shit,
strongly
oh
about
shit,
Avatar,
no.
which I actually recorded, and I'm going to have to say
That's right. Yeah.
yes.
You should know.
I'm
going
going
to
to go Avatar.
Everybody's going Avatar?
Yep.
You want to know what I thought it wasn't? Avatar.
Oh, no. So you did. All right. Kenny goes first on the next round. Yeah, the voice is pretty distinctive. And there's a rhythm kind of thing.
Well, you didn't pick the main cue, so that's the one I had in mind. You're getting more difficult with this.
Well, that's the point. We got too many people sweeping the table, right, Robert?
Mm-hmm.
Question 2. These are comedies that involve aliens. Is this Men in Black, 1997, Danny Elfman, Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014, Tyler Bates, or Galaxy Quest, 1999, David Newman?
It's going to be harder.
Kenny thinks he knows, and he gets to go first.
Men in Black.
Men in Black, says Kenny.
I agree.
Me too.
All right, 2 for 2.
I don't know what is it that stands out to me about that. Immediately, there's something.
Kind of
No, I think I know. The dissonance, because Galaxy
Is it the
Quest...
bass line?
Galaxy Quest is a pretty breezy, melodic score.
Yep.
What was the middle one?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
That is also
It's more
pretty
like thematic, rich, Marvel.
Yeah, and that was just kind
I
of
think it's
noisy.
that bass line that catches me, though. That.
Mm-hmm. There's something very bouncy about it.
Yeah.
All right, we're 2 for 2, but these are going to get a little bit tougher.
Okay.
We've stacked the questions here. So question 3, is this Close Encounters, 1977, John Williams, Contact, 1997, 20 years later,
One of my
Alan
favorite
Silvestri,
scores of all time.
or, all right, Pressure's On, or Arrival, 2017, Johan Johansson, and these are all exactly 20 years apart.
Contact.
Contact, says Chris Beck.
Oh, I'm gonna go.
Oh, it could be
Yes,
Close
Kenny?
Encounters.
I'm going
Could
Close
be
Encounters.
Do we need to hear it again?
It has a
Yeah,
little.
one more
It
time.
has that horn, that John Williams trumpet
and also
thing
those
going on.
3 octaves of strings. Let's hear that again. It's a pretty good tune backwards. Man.
I'm going Close Encounters.
Kenny's going.
But you're
Close
scaring
Encounters.
me calling
You're
out your
locking in a
favorite
final
score.
answer,
I'm
Kenny?
sandbagging, which is what you do in Vegas when you watch other people bet. And then
He warned me you would do this while you were in the bathroom.
wait. Chris, what do you think?
It's when I think of Close Encounters, I think of all the really strange sounds that he made, and so that's why I immediately thought of Contact, which is very thematic. I'm gonna just go with my gut. Contact.
Tiebreaker.
All right, we got different
Close
answers.
and close.
Jeez.
I'm going close. I'm sorry. I'm so excited. I'm going Close Encounters because this time I'm going to steal Kenny's
All
answer.
right, there is a winner. How many winners are there?
Oh.
Chris, unfortunately, that one didn't
That
work.
hurts. It's the actual classic freaking tune also.
Yeah, that didn't sound like the.
You know what it was? Back when we played it backwards, I cut off the first note
Oh,
so
you're
that you
just
wouldn't
that-
have. Otherwise, you'd hear.
Evil. Just
All
to
right.
embarrass.
So
all
now,
of us.
Chris, don't despair, Chris. I know there's a lot of pressure, obviously, and
No, I understand my situation here.
there
I
is
have
a
to
2-point
hope,
tiebreaker
yeah,
coming
okay.
up here. So
We got 2 more questions before then, right? So
Yep.
all I have to
And
do
a-
is
and a
make sure
possible
they
tiebreaker.
fuck up at least one time each.
That's
So
right.
remember,
All
though,
right.
they're looking at you. So you can pull a John Powell here, give the wrong answer maybe, and then they'll
And
go
then-
with
Oh,
that.
did he
and
do
then
that?
flip it
That's
around.
like
He
highly
did.
strategic 3D chess going
I
on there.
know.
Wow.
The old switcheroo.
Yeah.
All right, question 4. Alien Invasion movies, War of the Worlds, 2005, John Williams. Independence Day, 1996, David Arnold. Or Mars Attacks, 1996, Danny Elfman. All right, people are looking around the room.
Oh, dude,
What
you're
are the
killing
3
me.
choices? Yeah, that was. What are the
War
3 choices?
of the Worlds, John Williams. Yeah, remember the microphone there.
I'm yelling. I've fallen down. I can't get up. Go ahead.
War of the Worlds, 2005, John Williams. Independence Day, 1996, David Arnold. Mars Attacks, exclamation point, 1996, Danny Elfman.
I've got my best poker face on, and since I like to think of myself as not a dummy, I'm going to let the other guys go first.
Oh. Chris is becoming
I'm going to go Independence Day
Kenny says Independence Day.
by David Arnold.
Should we hear it again?
I'm going Independence Day as well for the simple reason that, first, geographically, we're very close to where that score was written, sitting here. And I think
that's
that
not part of
in
the quiz.
That in itself lends itself to
Closest to the
Okay,
pin.
so that puts me in a very interesting position here, because if I simply agree with them, which I think I do,
You got
then I have
another-
no chance of tying
You do,
a
because
tiebreaker.
our 5th question's worth double. So you got to
could go out on a limb, get it right, and you re-entered the race.
It's like, do you intentionally foul at the end of a basketball game? You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying? So,
Should we listen one more time?
just in case we're
not at
all
the end yet.
wrong, maybe.
What was your other instinct?
What were the other two choices again? Not Mars Attacks.
War of the Worlds, Independence Day,
No,
Mars
it's-
Attacks.
Yeah. Sadly, it's Independence Day. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's better than getting it wrong.
You're right.
You can do that strategy again on the next question.
Let's see if they get harder.
All right, so we're coming down to our
Even backwards, there's no mistaking that patriotic feeling.
yeah, with the drums that are in there. So question 5, it comes down to this 2-point question.
I'm really sad.
Well, we'll see.
I don't know that movie.
Jeez. Question number 5, worth 2 points. Is this from 2001, A Space Odyssey, which is maybe from 1896, Richard Strauss? Star Trek, the motion picture, 1979, Jerry Goldsmith. Or, Chris, is this Edge of Tomorrow?
Oh, I heard it.
Kenny thinks he knows.
I'm not going to go first.
I think you should go first, Kenny.
It was
It was. I don't even remember what your options were, but I heard the
2001.
song. It's Star Trek.
2001, Star Trek, the motion picture, 1979, or Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah. Kenny?
Yeah,
That's Star Trek.
He's right.
Kenny's saying Star Trek.
I'm
Chris
going
says
with
Star Trek.
I'm going with Kenny's answer and Chris's
You're not
answer.
going to make it fun, huh?
I couldn't possibly. They look so certain, and I'm so clueless.
Yeah, actually, I think it's you that's not making it fun, but go ahead.
Does anyone want to change their answer?
I don't.
Kenny's very confident. This usually shakes him.
I actually wasn't paying attention to your options, and I heard the theme.
That's
This
a
is
pretty
getting
good
even
sign.
better.
Everybody gets that one. I think just like the previous one, I cut off the first couple notes reversed.
It didn't help.
Didn't work this time.
All right, well, we got a tiebreaker. Our winners are I guess, Kenny and Robert.
I'll be over here sulking behind my modular synth.
I think we should
That
make
was
this
my
tiebreaker.
favorite
The
cue.
tiebreaker's worth triple, though. That's what I said
That's
last
right.
time.
Could bring us
Well,
back.
there's only 1 point separating, so tiebreaker can be worth 2. This could still be anybody's
But I'm
game.
not tied.
You're not, but
We
you're
need a
only
tie
one
to
behind.
break.
One
It's
point.
not a close breaker. It's a tiebreaker.
I say we go with the.
I
two-
like how the
2
rules
point.
change when I'm winning,
All right, good.
but not when I'm losing.
I accept your rule change. I'm in.
I accept it too.
All right, well, democratically now we have to. Sorry, this is the way it works, Kenny. Question number 6 is this. These are the theme again is alien movies. Now these are neighborhood invasion movies. So our options here are Signs, 2002, James Newton Howard, Super 8, 2011, Michael Giacchino, Attack the Block, 2011, Basement Jaxx and Stephen Price.
Digging deep here. The choices one more time?
Choices here are Signs, 2002, James Newton Howard, Super 8, 2011, Michael Giacchino, Attack the Block, 2011, Basement Jaxx, and Stephen Price.
Golf rules. Last place goes first.
Kenny and Robert have to go first.
Oh, we have to go first now?
Yeah. You're the ones that are tied.
I was trying to.
Flog rules.
I'm going to go Signs.
Kenny's going Signs. Robert?
The JNH.
I really want to go the one I thought I'd never do, which is Stephen Price and Basement Jaxx. And I'm going to do it because I'm
Attack the Block?
'cause
Okay.
I'm
This is
crazy.
a great situation for me. I'll just pick the one that they didn't pick. This is my only chance of winning. So that's what I'm doing.
All right.
Michael
well,
Giacchino.
we have, so our tiebreaker did what it was intended to do because we do have a winner.
Well, obviously, Matt.
The winner is Kenny Holmes.
Woohoo, Kenny!
This is from Signs.
Great score.
It is a really good. Yeah.
Didn't we discuss this cue with James?
When we interviewed him, we did. Yeah, we brought that up.
Isn't that one of like the central motifs of like the entire score?
It
That
is.
was
Yeah.
my favorite
great.
cue.
It's great. It's very, it's very Goldsmithian in its economy.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So again, our big winner.
Thank you
Kenny
very much.
Holmes.
Congratulations. Sad congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to...
Do you have a sound effect of like 1,000 people crying? Because that's how I feel right now.
Let's see.
You know what we need is
don't.
that Price is Right loser horn. Boom, boom,
But Price was not right in this case. It was not that
There was
choice.
no Price.
Exactly.
I don't think
not
we have
Stephen
any.
Price.
We need to get a drop for that.
Well, we are giving away a prize now. Make sure to follow us at Score the Podcast and use hashtag Name That Score. We have an autographed Frozen soundtrack.
Yeah.
Who autographed it?
Christophe Beck.
Oh,
The one and
cool.
only Christophe Beck.
Cool.
autographed it.
How generous.
I had one question I wanted to ask you. We interviewed Michael Dana last week. He grew up in Toronto, and he had an interesting perspective on how Canadians might differ musically in their
that is
approach
very
than
interesting.
Americans. Have you thought about this before? Have you identified? One of the big things he said was he sensed when he came from Canada that a lot of Americans have a rebellious streak. They have a little bit more of a intensity and a fire, whereas a lot of Canadians, at least speaking about himself, said that he came from a background where there were a lot of different things to kind of pick and choose from, and he maybe didn't double down on things quite as much musically. But do you find that at all?
I've never thought about it before, but that makes perfect sense because it speaks to where we Canadians are as a culture vis-a-vis Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And all you have to do is look at our propensity to end sentences with A. Because there's a reason for that, right? I mean, here we are. We're a huge country by land size, but tiny by population and totally dominated by America culturally. In fact, to the point where, and I'm sure Michael early in his career might have been the beneficiary of this policy as well, the government basically enacted like incentives for people who were making all kinds of media, music, TV shows, films, to hire Canadian people. Mm-hmm. It was known as CanCon, which is Canadian content. And in the early mid-90s, that was the syndicated television boom. There were all these TV shows being made in Canada, and they needed to hire Canadian composers. And there was, by the way, an incorrect perception that the better composers were in LA and not in Canada. So they would come to LA, say, we need a composer for our show. And by the way, he or she has to be Canadian. And boom, 95% of my competition gone. And it was a fantastic way to start my career because I got some gigs that way, right. Honestly. So, you know, the reason why we say A is because it can turn any statement into a question, and we're very insecure. We want to make sure you Americans like us. So, you know, if I say something that's a definitive statement and I get suddenly worried that I'm going to piss you off because maybe I'm wrong, you know, I can like say, I can put this qualifier on it. Like, hey, it's a pretty nice day today, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just in case I'm wrong and it's not a nice day. Like, hey, whatever you say is cool, you know, America.
I've never heard that portrayal
that.
of why it's said.
It's totally true. And that totally goes with what Michael said, which is the rebellious streak, the whole idea of, you know, Americans as puff-chested, you know, win, lose, you know, no ties, you know, that sort of thing. It's like, it's boldness. It's, you know, we Americans have the confidence to be able to make these bold choices and not question ourselves. Whereas in Canada, you know, it's scary to make a bold choice because you might piss off the Americans.
Well, we think it's hot today. It's a hot day, and if
Well,
you disagree,
good then.
you're wrong.
Exactly. Thank you.
And I know that if my car breaks down in Canada, I know who to call. AAA. Eh?
Oh, gee.
Oh, boy.
And on that note,
that might be a good time to wrap the show up. Again, we want to remind our listeners that we had a winning week. I did, at least.
Oh,
Yeah, we
geez. See, you don't get this in Canada. You got an
Papara-
American.
paparazzi are waiting
I won,
outside Chris's.
Yeah, maybe. I'll get back to you on that.
So make sure to go to our social media, Twitter @ScoreThePodcast, and make sure to use the hashtag #NameThatScore, and you, yes, you, could win that fabulous prize, the Frozen soundtrack autographed by Christophe Beck. And also, please go to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Rate and review if you like what you're hearing. It's helping us grow.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you so much for that Canada question, by the way. That was
Christophe
awesome.
Beck. Stay tuned for next week's guest and next week's episode of podcast The Score.
Huh?
What's the show called again?
Score the podcast. See,
Huh.
you don't realize it. What I'm doing is saying it backwards, kind of setting up next week's game. Score that name. Thanks so much.
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.